When it comes to the computerized things, at that time the things will going to be very smooth. Data, it is a collection of facts, figures, statistics which can be processed to produce meaningful information. That volume of data which will going to be processed is not so great, or it will be limited in nature. Without data, can I do the processing? Obviously no. So we have to collect the data. That is the first step. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I am Rohini TS from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram PU College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So in our today's session, we will be discussing about the second PUC's 13th chapter, that is database concepts. So let me get into the today's topics. So in our today's session, we are going to discuss regarding the introduction about the database concept, and also we will be learning about the applications of database and origin of database, and also we will be discussing about the evolution of database and also data processing cycle along with some terminologies which is related to the database. Let me get into the today's session, that is regarding database concepts. So when it comes to the database, so as we all know that data and informations will be considered as an asset. That means without that we can't do anything. Then the processing of that data and collection of that data and storing of that data and maintaining of that data is so important. So when it comes to the database, it is a collection of logically related data which is originated in a way that data can be easily accessed, managed and updated. Then what do you mean by database here? Database is a collection of logically related data. For example, if I am storing the information regarding the students, then it has to include the details only about the student. It should not include any of the details regarding the employee or regarding the entertainment purpose. Nothing should be like that. So when we are calling logically related data, that particular database has to store the same kind of data which meant for single thing. That means it has to be logically related to one and other. So that data will going to be organized in a way. So how it will be organized? That must be easy for the accessible, and it must be easy for management and also for updation. And noun facts that can be recorded and that have implicit meaning. So here, as we all know that we are collecting the logically related data, so it has a meaning. So that kind of data we are storing. And also mini word or universe of discourse. So what it means? Any kind of data I can store it in a database, but it must be logically related to one and other. So that is related to what? Database. So by making use of this database, we are going to represent some aspects of the real world. So as I told, if I want to take a data of a student, that is existed naturally, and also if I wanted to take a details of an employee is also real world object. That means we can use this database in order to store the real world aspects, and also logically coherent collection of data with inherent meaning. So everything is related to one another. So inherent in the sense what? One is related to another. So we are retrieving, we are storing the data, we are accessing, we are managing, we are updating. For everything we are going to use the database. It must be freely available in order to store the logically related data, and also built for a specific purpose. As I told, if I wanted to store a student details, at that time it should not include any details regarding an employee, or it should not store a details regarding the student friends, because I am only taking about details about the student. It should not include any other data which is not relevant to this student. Okay, in that way we have to think any object or anything which could be in the real world aspect that we can store with the help of this database. And this definition of database is also important for 1 marks. Define database. We'll see the next topic, that is related to applications of database. Now I got to know that what is database, then what are the fields we have where we can apply this database, where we can use this database. That is related to what? Applications of database. What is the first thing? It is related to banking. So you just imagine, can you imagine the banks without any computerized things? So you just imagine the earlier days. So how were the days at that time? They have to maintain one ledger, they have to write everything manually. So when the computer come into existence, or when some software which is related to banking or related to storing of logical related information has been arrived, at the time they started using computers in order to store the data and information. So if you just imagine the earlier days, at the time they have to write everything manually. For example, I am going to withdraw 500 rupees from one ATM. So if it is not going to update it to my database, if the computer does not exist, at that time, how will be the situations? So they have to check all the pages. They have to check at least record for a particular employee, and they have to check for the amount withdrawn and amount deposited, credited. Everything they have to maintain as a record. So when it comes to the computerized things, at that time the things will going to be very smooth. So for example, banking. So in order to store the details of a bank, in order to store the details of an account holder and loan amount, when they have taken, and what is their durations, how much they have paid, on what date, on what time, every details will going to be stored. So in the banking sector, we are going to use the database in order to store the logically related data. So that is may related to what? Bank branch, bank name and bank details, bank employee content, or it may also include the bank holders, applicant resultant, everything will going to be stored. So that will going to make the transaction very easy and convenient for everybody. And also we have a water meter billing. So as we all know that when it comes for the billing, either it could be electricity bill or water bill, we are going to have some RR number, that is unique number for each connection, right? So if I have that RR number, then it has the ability to hold and store the data and information which is related to particular sector. So by making use of that technology, we are going to store the data and information which may also related to water meter billing, and also rail and airline. So like booking of a customer seats and departure and their arrival, every data and timings of the aeroplanes or helicopter, whatever they are going to use, along with that trains, every details will going to be stored in a database. So it will be very convenient in order to access, manage as well as to update. And also colleges. So here they are going to store the data and information which is related to an employee of a college or a faculty of a college, and also student details, their parents detail, academic detail, entertainment, their curriculum activities related to sport, all the details of a college or school and any of the educational sector will going to be stored with the help of this database. And also we have a credit card transaction, how much they have paid, how much they have retrieved, every value of an employer or the card holder, every details of that will also going to be stored in the database. And also related to finance, then sales. So manufacturing of a goods and outward, inward, how much they have paid, on what date they have taken, every data which is related to sales can also be stored. And also telecommunication, then we have a manufacturing of a goods, raw materials used, all the details, all the relevant details will be stored in the database, as well as the human resource. So this is nothing but what? HRM. So taking of an employee or giving training to them and applying for the job, like either decline, accept, all the data which is related to human resource. That means how we are using the employee, for what purpose we are taking, what are their working procedures, how they are getting trained, every data of that particular things will going to be stored. So if you consider all these applications, all these are related to what? Real world aspects. So it will going to have a logical connection between one another. So that is what the reason we are going to use this database. And this is also important for 5 marks question. So or else they can ask you to mention, or they can ask you to explain the applications of database. How will be used in the banking sector, how will be used in the sales, communications, everything that you have to describe. We'll see the next topic, that is related to origin of data. So now I'm talking about the database. Then who is going to give the data for all these things? We have to think. That is what origin, in the sense from where we are getting the data, from where we are getting the elements or facts. That is related to what? Origin of a data. So it includes what? We have a data as well as the information. Then what is the difference between data and information? Some misconception is there. That is what we sometimes consider about data and information as same. But that is the wrong thing. Data is separate and information is separate. That means both have a different meanings. So if I am saying any number, like you just consider Suma 12. If I write like this, what you are going to understand by this? So if I just simply writing Suma 12, is this 12 is her age? Is this 12 is a door number? What it is, or whether it is a roll number? I really don't know. That means there is no logical connection between these two things. And if I am saying Suma, whether it is a name of office, whether it is a name of any of the organization, what it is, whether it is a name of an employee, there will be some confusions. I need some fruitful data. I need some fruitful data. So that means what? It must have some meaning. So if it is meaningless or it needs to be processed in order to get the particular information, then that kind of data will be considered as, that kind of facts or elements will be considered as what? Data. So data, it is a collection of facts, figures, statistics which can be processed to produce meaningful information. I didn't get the information yet. I am using this in order to get the information. Then what is information? Information is a processed data. It is processed data. Let me tell you, I am going to take employee name is equal to Suma and roll number, or let me take employee ID. Employee ID is equal to 12. Which is more convenient in order to understand whether this one or this one? I hope it will be this one. Why? Because it has a meaningful data. It has a meaningful information. It has a meaningful information that will be considered as what? Information. It is a process of converting data into some meaningful information. So that it is a process data. Here I have processed. What did I process? I just mentioned what is this Suma is all about and what is our employee ID. So that is what? Process data stored or transmitted by a computer. So data is a raw fact and processed raw facts will be termed as information. And this is also important for 2 marks question. Define data and information, or can be a situation of asking a question like differentiate data from information. This is related to origin of data. So now we'll see how this evolution of database has taken place. So here we have to consider two things when we are doing the database or when we are working with the database. So we have to think about the manual data processing as well as the computerized electronic data processing. How are the things in the manual data processing and how things will going to take place in the computerized electronic data processing. So here when the manual data processing is taking place, there human intervention is required. So every calculations, the taking of data and inputting and processing of that data, everything will going to be takes place with the help of humans, and we are going to do it everything manually. But when it comes to the computerized electronic data processing, it will going to take a help of computer for the processing of data, and you can expect this question for 5 marks in your examination. So consider this as an important question. We'll see the first difference, that is the volume of data which can be processed is limited in a desired time. So when it comes to the manual data processing, here the processing of data will going to be, that means a large amount of data will going to take more time. So we can't do the processing of data within a given time in a bulk amount. That is what the volume of data which can be processed is limited. So we can do the processing, but it will take more time. And here the volume of data which can be processed can be very large. So because we are doing it with the help of computer, so it will going to take less time, and also we can process large amount of data. Second difference is manual data processing requires large quantity of paper. So anyway, I told you that we are using a manual data processing, so it requires human intervention. If it is requiring human intervention, then we have to write. Then where we are going to write that? On the paper itself. So it requires more paperwork, and the quantity of usage of that paper will also be very high. And here reasonable less amount of paper is used. So we are going to use reasonable amount of paper. So though we are doing the data processing with a computer itself, we require at least one human being in order to operate that computer, so that it requires in order to generate a receipt, so in order to generate some QR code, for that purpose we require paperwork. So some reasonable number of papers are required while doing the data processing with the help of this electronic data processing. And then the speed and accuracy at which the job is executed is limited, because we are doing it everything with the help of human intervention and we are doing it manually. We are need to do the paperwork. So the accuracy will somehow lesser than when it compares to the computerized electronic data processing, and speed is also be low than the computerized electronic data processing. And here when it comes to the computerized electronic processing, at that time the job executed is faster and accurate. So you can expect more accuracy in the data processing as well as it will be faster in nature. And here labor cost is high because as I told, one computer will going to replace the 4 employees at least. So here if I am having any of the employee in order to do the data processing manually, we have to pay for them. So for that purpose the labor cost will be high. But if you consider the computerized electronic data processing, there I may require only one operator instead of having 4 laborers, so that labor cost is economical. And what is the last difference? Storage medium is paper. We have a data processing cycle, right? First I have to gather, I have to take the input, then I have to process, then it has to be stored somewhere else. So which medium I am using in order to store? That is paper. But here we are doing it with the electronic processing, that is we are doing it with a computer. So we are going to use secondary storage devices, like we are going to use hard disk, pen drive. That is, we are using a secondary storage devices in order to store the data and information which is generated after the data processing. So these are the difference between manual data processing as well as the computerized electronic. Let me move on to the next topic, that is data processing cycle. Now we got to know that what is data processing. So in order to do this data processing, what is this cycle? That means it is a repetitive things. It will going to happen daily or it will going to be repeatable. It is somehow like a looping. So once I am done with the cycle of one particular data processing, again I have to follow the same thing for another data processing, so that it will be considered as what? Data processing cycle. So here we have some of the stages. By using each stages, we are going to do something which is related to further data processing. What is the first point or what is the first step we have? That is data collection. Without data, can I do the processing? Obviously no. So we have to collect the data. That is the first step. What is the first step? Data collections. How we are going to do that then? It is a process of systematic gathering of data from various sources that has been systematically observed, recorded as well as organized. So I am collecting the data from various sources. For example, if I am holding a details about any of the college, at the time are we going to collect the data from a single data source? No, right? We are going to collect the data of an employee, we are going to collect the data of a student, we are going to collect the data of a inward, outward, what is the infrastructure is all about, and permission taken from the government. Everything we are going to collect the data from different sources. So here also data collection is a process of gathering systematic gathering of a data from various sector. Okay, that needs to be logically related to each other, but we are collecting the data from different sources. I am collecting the data about the college from various sources, but after collecting all those things, it has to process the data or it has to produce the data and information which is related to college only. So that is what we have to collect the data from different sources. So now I got some of the data. Next step, what we have to do? We have to take the input. So how I am going to do that? The raw data is put into the computer using a keyboard, mouse or any other devices such as scanner, microphone and then digital camera. So these are the input devices. By using these input devices, we are giving this data for the processing as an input. For example, I am taking a student result. I am going to write the student details with a paper's pen, or I am just going to feed that by using computer. So for processing, in order to get to know who got the highest score when they are joining PU, what was their 10th result, if I wanted to check all those things, at that time what I am going to do, I am just going to taking the input. I am collecting the data from various sources. I am using that data which is already available with the help of some of the keyboard or some of input devices. I am using the data for my processing. So that is data input. Next is what? Data processing. So in this step we are going to do the computation. That means what? Processing is the series of actions or operations on the input data to generate outputs. Now I wanted to check who got the highest marks. That means the students, those who have joined the college from any of the school to first PU college. I just wanted to greet them with some of the gifts. So that means they have scored high. I wanted to check. How can I check that? I have hundreds of students. So at that time, I can't keep on recording or keep on checking each student. So I'm just going to apply some of the formulas, or I'm just going to do some, like I'm going to have some of the application software. With the help of that, we are converting, or we are getting the data. So that means in the processing, we are doing some of the operations, or we are taking some actions in order to convert the data input to, in order to generate that as a output. So out of this 100 student, I am going to get only one student who got more marks among this 100. At that time, that is generating the result. So that is generating the result. So that is what we are doing in the data processing. So now I gather the data, I take that data as an input, and processing has been done. Now what we have to do, I have to store it somewhere, right? For my future use, I have to store the data. How I am going to do that? Data and information should be stored in the memory so that it can be accessed later. So as of now, I just wanted to take the result of 100 students. What about if any other 100 students are joining the same college? I just wanted to keep my previous data. For that purpose, we are going to have this storage. So when it comes to the storage, we have to store the data and information for the purpose of future use. And also, we have our output. Now I gathered the data, input has been taken, processing has been done, and it is in the storage. So now I wanted to display it. How we are going to do that? With the help of output. The result obtained after the processing data must be presented to the user. So we have to present the data to the user. I have to say who is the top amongst this 100 students. No, that means I have to represent the data to the user in user understandable form. So whatever the result and that we are giving, that must be understandable by the user. And also the output can be generated in the form of report as hard copy as well as the soft copy. It can be what printed form, or it can also be displayed on a computer screen or a monitor screen. This is related to output. This will be the fourth point or fourth step. This is fifth, and this last is the sixth. That is related to what? Communication. It has to be shared between one another. That means computer nowadays have a communication ability which increases their power. So if I have a data and if I don't have a privilege to share the data with others, then somehow it is considered as what? No of use. So it must be able to have a communication skill or a communication power. That means we are collected the data, I have taken that as an input, it has been processed and I have stored somewhere else, the output has been generated, it has to reach to the user, those who are in need. Okay, so here you can see that first I am going to collect the data and I will take the input and it will going to be processed. Once it is processed, it will going to be stored in the storage. If I want that stored data again for my processing, again I can take it. So once it is done, it will going to be generated as an output and we are going to use that for communication purpose. So these are the steps we have in the data processing cycle. Next, we'll see some of the terminologies which is related to the database. So now I got to know what is database and what is the use of having this database and how the data will going to be originated, what is its evaluation, and now we'll see about the some terminologies which is related to the database. What is the first terminology I have? That is related to file. So what is this file? File is a basic unit of storage in a computer system. I wanted to store something where I can store with the help of some storage devices, right? I wanted to store the file is also considered as a unit of storage. So I am storing some data and information systematically. For that purpose, we are going to have this file. And also we got to know related to database already. No need to discuss it again. We'll see the next one, that is tables. Very, very important things. So let me write one table for you in order to explain all these terminologies. Let me consider this as a table called employee. And employee has an employee ID and he is going to have name and he is going to obviously draw the salary, right? So let me consider I have these many things in the employee table. So what is this employee table? So apart from this example, let me explain what is table first. So table is a collection of data elements organized in the terms of rows and columns. What is this table? It is a collection of data elements which will going to be organized in the terms of rows as well as columns. So here you can see that I have one row, here row 1, row 2 and I have row 3. Along with that I have row 4 and I have some of the columns called column 1, column 2 and column 3. This is vertical, this is horizontal. So table is organized in the terms of rows and columns. So it will be in the terms of as well as the columns, it will be as well as the row. So this will be considered as what? Intersection of rows and columns. Organization of that rows and columns together will be considered as what? Table. I hope you all understood. Next is record. A single entry in a table is called row or record. Let me tell you, let me consider employee ID as 1 and name will be, let me consider ABC and 25. And here 2 and EFG, let me consider 28, 3 and GHI and here 27. What is this record is all about? A single entry in a table. Single entry in a table. I am entering the data of a employee. That particular single entry will be termed as what? Record or row. Already we have discussed regarding the row. That single entry will be termed as what? Row. And what is this tuples is all about? Tuples, row, records, all are same. Remember, records are also called as tuples or tuples. So here, records, tuples or row. So these are the synonyms of this records. We'll see the next one, that is related to fields. Okay. So each column is identified by a distinct header called attribute or field. So what are the synonyms for this fields then? It will be called as attribute or field. So if you consider the column here, all the columns are unique. I am not taking employee ID, employee ID, employee ID. I am also not taking name, name, name. And also salary, salary, salary. So what we are doing, each column has a unique name. Each column has a unique field. That will be considered as what? Attribute or a field. Each column is identified by a distinct header. So distinct header. So if I consider what is the header? Employee ID, here name and here salary. So that will be considered as what? Field or a column. And it is also considered as attribute. So that to specify what is this data is all about. If I say name, that is also attribute that specify name of an employee. Okay, that is related to field. Next we will see domain. Set of values for an attribute in that column. So what is this domain is all about? Set of values for an attribute in that column. For example, let me consider this name column. Okay, so I have a name column. Here I have 3 values. What is that? A, B, C, E, F, G and G, H, I. So if I consider this as a set of column, that means if I consider this as a set of value for a particular column, then that will be termed as what? Domain. That will be termed as domain. I hope you understood. If I consider a salary, you just consider this as 25K, 28K and 27K. Okay. So if I consider a salary, at that time this set of entry will be termed as what? Domain. Okay. And also we have a last terminology called an entity. That is, it is an object such as table or form. What is the entity here then? That is employee. Employee is an entity. It can be related to what? Table or a forms. You understood? So we have a file, we have a table and we have a database, record, particular row and tuples, that is also called as row, and we have a field that represents the particular unique column, and a set of that values for each column will be termed as domain, and entity, that is the name of a table or any of the forms. This is related to some of the terminology which is related to database. It's all about today's session. I hope you all understood all the concepts. Let me meet you in the next session with the continuation of this chapter itself. Until that, you all keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.